Hello fellow pianists, you just heard Beethoven's delightful Écossaise without Opus 23. This is one of the easiest piano pieces you can learn by Beethoven. I've ranked it a level 2.8 out of 10 difficulty. I'll be using my Bronson Musical Learning Pyramid to systematically teach you as a pianist how to go through learning the rhythms, the note reading and fingering, the articulations, meaning all those slurs and staccatos, the dynamics with some voicing, and we'll talk about the style and mood to play this appropriate for a classical and Beethoven style of playing. I encourage you to use this video to first just learn how to play Beethoven's Écossaise. Once the notes are fairly comfortable, even hand separate, go watch part 2, where I show you how to use proper technique with wrist circles and forearm rotation. It's really critical to learn how to play with proper technique if you ever want to play fluently, fast, and with musical expression. I have further developed my musical learning pyramid for you to show you within each category 4 different skills that could propose a difficulty for you as a pianist. For my ranking analysis, the note reading and fingering category is the most difficult within this piece. However, the single most difficult aspect to play is really all of the articulations. Stay tuned, I'll show you how to apply proper technique to play that, but just a little heads up, you'll see that he uses some staccato dots versus the wedges, which is a very short way of playing. So stay tuned, I'll show you how to do that along with me. If you'd like to see this breakdown of skills in terms of their difficulty level, I'll include that in the description below this video. Within today's tutorial, I'm going to help you learn how composers mark the articulations, which is just a fancy way of saying all the precise ways we play notes, which are slurs, the staccatos. You'll notice there's some dots and some wedges to make a difference between the type of shortness we're supposed to play. Also, we'll have some accents within this piece. The other thing I'll coach you is really how to play these articulations within a fast tempo, with the left hand using extended hand positions, moving very quickly. So I'll walk you through some practice strategies so you can build it up to the tempo that I demonstrated for you to begin. A little background info, I always love the music history of these classical pieces. This was actually composed in 1810 by Beethoven for a military wind band. So its original title was Écossaise for military music. Czerny, who was one of Beethoven's very top students and really the father of all these virtuoso pianists that Czerny subsequently taught, he arranged this for the piano in 1810 and he published it after Beethoven's death. So Écossaise is actually a popular dance. They would have danced this for the beginning and the ending of an evening. Hence, it's really fast articulations and tempo. You can also find this within the book I love to teach, Beethoven, an Introduction to His Piano Works, published by Alfred. Something that they do a great job on is that they show you in black bold font what Beethoven or Czerny, when he arranged this, would have included with all the slurs and staccatos. Anything editorial they include in a very light gray. So you can make the distinction if you'd like to include some of those editorial or just follow what Beethoven's written. All right, pianists, let's get started with learning this piece together. Let's look at our Bronson Musical Learning Pyramid. We always start with the foundation of music, which is the rhythm. And when we look at the difficulty levels within rhythm, really the performance tempo of Allegro is the most difficult thing that we're going to focus on today. Notice it's marked Allegro by Beethoven and also Czerny, which is about 120 minimum for the quarter note. In a 2/4 time signature, we're going to feel the quarter note beats. 1, 2, 1, 2. It says really playful syncopations, and syncopations means just emphasizing the weak beats, which is like your 2 and your and beat as well. So let's get started with learning the rhythm of this. So we have a pickup. Notice I have 2/16 to begin. This starts on the end of 2. 2/16 equal 1/8 note. So this is 1 and 2, and 1 and 2, and 1 and 2, and 1 and 2, and 1 and 2. So notice that Beethoven uses these pickup feelings almost all the way through. If you look at measure 8, when you go back to the repeat, we have 1 and 2, and 1. There's where beat 2 is completed. Also, if you go on from measure 8 to 9, 1 and 2, and 1 and the very last measure, same type of idea, 1 and 2, and 1 and. So get used to that and beat is a beat that will come in quite often on. All right, I'm gonna have you practice this tapping along with me at half tempo. I'm gonna put the metronome on at 1/4 of 60. And I'd like you just to practice. You can clap along with, you can tap your right hand on a table or the piano while I play along with this. I'm just going to do the right hand because the left hand is very simple in rhythm. It's just straight 8th notes. Kind of like a built-in metronome for you as the pianist. So we're gonna play the right hand. I'm gonna turn on that metronome at 60. Let's do no repeats through this way. 1 and 2. And 2 and 1. And then you could go back to that repeat at measure 9. Da capo al fine means da capo meaning the head of the piece. You go back to the beginning and finish at measure 8 for your final time through. So something I've noticed that beginners will do is sometimes they'll play the easy music like these 5-finger scales really fast, but then maybe they get to a jump. And they really take their time because that takes some time to just manage that jump. I'll show you how to do that with note reading, but I would suggest you actually start it all very slow in a stable tempo. That way you can build it up gradually. Use a lot of that metronome at 60, even slower if you need to. Every day, just build it up a little bit each time. All right, pianists, now we're within the note reading and fingering category. This is really the most difficult aspect of this piece because of the jumps. The left hand's extended and it's moving pretty quickly, but thankfully the piece is very repetitive. So once you get down a couple measures, you're gonna be able to repeat it multiple times within the sense of a phrase and the actual repeats that Charity gives you. All right, we'll start with the basics with our note reading. Let's look at our key signature first. I see 1 sharp, that's F sharp. We go up 1 half step for G major. If you know your octave scales, you can warm up. I have some other videos that you can learn that along with me. It's C fingering. If you don't know those yet, the right hand actually uses only 2 5-finger scales. You can just do 5-finger scales. This also uses the primary chords. Beethoven was a piano teacher, so he was emphasizing the 1, the G, the 4-6-4, C, 5-7, which is D, 7, and G. So simple harmonies. So warm up so you start thinking in the key. All right, once you've got your key established, let's start looking at the right hand notes. We start in a B4, which is the B, a 7th above middle C. And this uses the finger 3. Okay, so rather than just reading note by note, which will take way too much time in the right hand, I have given you some colors to show you that the right hand fits within 2 5-finger scales. G major, and it's going to go up by a step to A minor and then back down. So just get really comfortable shifting the right hand, not having to watch it. The key is minimal watching of the right hand because the left hand has some big jumps. We're gonna have to use our eyes to spot those notes ahead of time. So let's go through the right hand on B4. We'll talk about some of these jumps, how to practice it. 1 and 2, B4, 3rd, 2nd, up a 7th. Notice I had to watch that there. You might be able to get that comfortable. This is a hard spot. All of the hard spots, repeat them like 5 times at least in a row. You can use your eyes to spot that E for the 7th. Just isolate, jumping back and forth until that gets comfortable. Once you jump up there, you're in an A 5-finger scale with a half step here, finger 3 on the end of measure 4, back to a G 5-finger scale, and it repeats like before. Same jump spot, the E early, A minor, back to a G. And if you repeat, you're already set for that position. Back of the repeated measure 1. We're gonna go on to measure 9. We're gonna have to shift up to A 5-finger scale. So use that sense of hand position, bring your hands into position. Don't just leave your fingers splayed out like that. Here's measure 9, pick up, 3rds. Repeats that exactly. Fingering change, 4-2, 3-1, 5-1 for the 6th, 4-1, back to a G 5-finger scale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1. So some other isolation spots are really 13 to 14. So we're gonna come into it at 13. You're in that A 5-finger scale on 3-1, 3-1, 4-2, extend it out. So some practice strategies, just isolate, fingering substitutions first. Just small segments, get those comfortable, automatic before you add on to it. Then you can practice stopping on that 6. That's that next hand extension. and then it goes back into a 5-finger scale. So spots to isolate is the 7th at measure 2, repeats at 6, and then the fingering substitution from 13 to 14 in the right hand. I would even just practice right hand by itself, that metronome at 60, slowly build it up so it's automatic before you really try to do a lot with hands together. Let's learn the left hand next. All right, pianists, in the left hand, let's start with measure 1. It starts in a G3, which is just a 4th below middle C. And this is where he uses those 1, 4, and 5 chords. We're first going to start them with blocking. I know I have some students that complain against blocking at first, but it really pays off. The reason being, rather than thinking this note and then these notes and then they repeat, that's at least 4 different thoughts within the measure. Think it as one thought. Condense it down. This is a G major chord. Just get that comfortable in the hand. Measure 2 is going to have the 5-finger go down a 4th to a D7 with the root, the 5th, and the 7th. Notice measure 3, instead of the A, it uses an F sharp, the 3rd. The reason being is the right hand uses that A. Doesn't want to double up those chord tones. Back to measure 4. We have a G sus chord where he uses the 4th and suspends it, resolves it there to the 3rd. Measure 5 is an exact repeat. So you have the G chord 1, 5, 7 using the 5th, 5, 7 using the 3rd, back to the G, and it jumps down. So then you can play that in time as the downbeats. G major, D7, and you can even block that 5th. Use those rests in the right hand to be able to watch early for that left hand. That's a good spot to isolate. Then once you can play that way, you can block it in the rhythm. 1 and 2, look ahead, D. 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and go ahead and find that 5th. That way, that will just really internalize and make that automatic in the left hand. Then you can practice it by itself. The advantage of this broken chord accompaniment pattern is while one part of your hand is playing, the other one is getting ready. You can feel that 3rd beforehand and then move up. And then it's in position, look ahead, look for that D. So use your eyes at first to guide, but if you're going to play this hands together successfully, especially watching the score, you want to be a good sight reader that depends on your eyes watching the score. So once you've guided those positions, see if you can just trust your hand to do it. Feel that. Bring it up. If you're missing one, you can just practice jumping to that. You might have to watch it first and then trust those movements. So get to the left hand comfortable first, blocking. All right, let's go to measure 9. We're now in octaves. So he extends this out. You don't have to play them together for the actual piece. We're going to block it to automatize this interval span. Rather than thinking 2 notes, think it as one thought, as an octave. Goes up a D major chord. Here's D, here's the 3rd. Go into the keys, the A, the D. Look ahead, spot that D. Same pattern, thankfully. And then we go to 6th with 4-1 octave on the C down an octave. We talk about measure 14. If you have a little larger hand than me at 14, you can go to a 1-4, and it will make it look good to that 1-5. We're going to use some pedal in just a little bit, so I'm going to cover that up while I have to move my 5 to 5. So you can decide what feels best in your hand. Measure 15, back to D7. So spend some time really blocking that left hand. Get those positions automatized before you start to play it as written. The fingers can move. Remember, while the other part of your hand is playing, look, spot that D. That's probably a spot you just want to isolate going to from the high Ds to the low Ds. And then it repeats. Here we're on the 3rd, 5th, octave down. Okay, your hands together, steps then. Play the right hand as written. Take the left hand back to a blocked practice. Resolve it. Once you can do that, then you can play it in its rhythm. Same thing in the B section. And the Ds. Hands together, you'll probably have to isolate stopping on the downbeat of 14 to get those intervals comfortable. Take your time. You can go much slower than I am, just trying to demonstrate some practice strategies for you. And then slow hands together. Remember, don't go faster on the easy parts. Make it all the same stable tempo. So on. So you pick your practice. practice speed so it's all very stable. So we'll use some rubato in a little bit. All right, pianists, we've made it to the articulation category of our Bronson Musical Learning Pyramid. Let me just explain that term, articulations. It's just a really fancy way of saying the precise ways that we play notes. That can be the use of slurs and the dots for staccatos. You might notice something new on the score you might not have seen before. At measure 5, there's little wedges. Sometimes those are also called staccatissimo, meaning a very short sound. So we have a slur into a staccatissimo. I'll explain what all of those mean. We also have accents at measure 13. With the wedge, accent, the wedge, back to staccatos as well. So just to encourage you to really add these articulations and to stick with it, I'm going to play a pour demo. What would this sound like if we would actually ignore Beethoven in Czerny's markings? I'm not going to do any repeats, and then stay tuned. I'm going to coach you how to add them back in with great technique. Here it is. Completely changes the style of that piece. Sounds like a romantic ballad. Let's go back in and hear what that would sound like. Just give you a little preview of that again. And then in the B section. That's the style that Beethoven was meaning for a lively Écossaise. Okay, where did Beethoven get these different types of markings? This actually comes from Muzio Clementi's 1801 treatise, which was called The Introduction to the Art of Playing on the Pianoforte. You can find this in public domain. So he detailed what the different markings mean. He said the dot staccatos, is what he calls them, are a little less staccato, whereas the wedge staccatos, which we now know as staccatissimo, are released instantly. In an 1825 letter, Beethoven wrote that when there is a dot above a note, a wedge must not be put, and vice versa. Wedges and dots are not identical, so pay attention to the differences that Beethoven writes within this Écossaise to add the needed spirit. So we know that Beethoven followed those. He actually had Clementi publish all of his sonatas. So how do you achieve that sound technically? Let's go back to the staccatos. Some people like to think this mathematically. They think like the dots are about half the rhythmic value, whereas the wedges or the staccatissimo are a quarter of the value. So the staccatos stay close to the keys, whereas the wedges have a quick rebound off the key. You can imagine the keys are hot on those staccatissimo. Close, instantly release, slurred, stay close, smooth slur, short, 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 smooth, staccatos. Okay, you could go back through hand separate that way. The left hand, since it's repeated notes, I do agree with Alfred that those should just be a nice staccato touch, and that will match that right hand. Notice, however, at measure 9, that Beethoven marks these articulations differently. The right hand is the staccatos, whereas the left hand releases instantly. Think hotkeys down there. Just really helpful to let you move your hand quickly if I don't stay into the keys very long. So the right hand will stay more into the keys, left hand releases instantly at measure 9. Accents will be some arm weight. So let's go back in and add some of the arm weight for those accents and slurs. Measure 13, up, down, roll, off, up, down, roll, off, short. Notice that the hands match in articulations at measure 15. We go back to a couple more of those slurs. At measure 2, we have this little wedge, release instantly, down, roll, off. Same thing at measure 6, release instantly, down, roll, off. So the arm weight's going to drop down, roll, forward. And the way I practice these and have my students practice these is I give them the assignment to go through and isolate all the articulations that are the same, so they get consistent on the tone and the technique. So let's isolate the staccato dots to start. Here's into measure 1. Stay close to the keys, measure 3. And at measure 7, does the same thing. You get the idea? Then you can go through and find all of the staccatissimo or the wedges, measure 5. With that slur. Other staccatissimo would be like the left hand at measure 9. So find all those articulations, get that consistent tone. And then you could go through all the 2-note slurs, down, up, all the accents, down, up, followed by that staccatissimo at the end. Let's talk about one more form of technique you'll have to use for long slurs. We had the 2-note slurs, which is down, up. However, measure 10 is a string of slurred notes. We're going to use some technique of drop, down, roll, off. Watch that again. Down, roll, off. Just repeat that until that becomes comfortable. That's using some wrist circles you can check out in another video to have some more guidance off of Hanon number 1. All right, pianists, we move into the dynamics category. This is somewhat of the easiest aspect of the pieces. It's quite consistent, uses fortes and pianos. We're going to talk about some more nuances that we're going to add to it as well. So let me just give you a poor demo what it would sound like if I do no voicing, as you've been hearing me do a lot of voicing, or one hand louder than the other. Let me just do actually measures 9 to the end. So I'm going to play both hands as equal as possible. Okay, here's back with some voicing. I'm going to start to add some dynamic shaping, and I'll teach you how to do that. That's more of the style that Beethoven was going for. So let's get into those specifics. So voicing, meaning playing one hand louder than the other, can be achieved with silent play. If you've watched my other videos, so we're going to go with that in the B section. So silent play means literally just tapping on top of the keys where it's silent. It teaches that control within your hand to use the fingerings, but no sound will come out. And then you're going to try to play the right hand. You have to go quite slow at first with this. Right hand is normal, left hand is silent. See, I'm starting to play that left hand a little bit, but it's just going to be very soft. You just gradually put more weight into it. And that's how you get their melody louder than the left hand. Next, let's talk about the dynamic contrast that Beethoven already wrote in. This is a great example of the subito dynamics, or sudden dynamic changes, that Beethoven loves to use. We have 3. We have piano to start. Remember, this was originally written for a wind ensemble, so maybe this is the flutes and the clarinets, very soft. Whereas at measure 9, it's forte. This could be the brass, very robust and rich. And then at the end, at measure 15, piano, back to the flutes. Okay, so that's the 3 different dynamics, but we're going to add in some more phrase goals. I think Beethoven naturally writes in some phrase goals with those 2-note slurs and the accidentals on the syncopations. So I've drawn some arrows in your score to show that that is the loudest point of the phrase. So we crescendo to it and we decrescendo away. Here we're at piano, grow to here, a little bit of growth, grow to the forte. A lot of details, but I'll show you that on the score so you can follow along. If you'd like to add more resonance, we're going to use actually some pedal. No, there's nothing written in the score, but it said that Beethoven is known to make lavish use of the pedal, and his student Czerny, who arranged this piece, said that Beethoven used it far more than indicated in his works. So I'm going to have you add pedal at measure 2 at that phrase goal, measure 6, measure 10, and 13, and 14. So you can watch my foot for me to go down and up. Here it is. Notice at the ends of the 2-note slurs and the staccatissimos, I'm going to release that pedal so I don't obscure that shortness of sound. All right, pianists, we've worked our way to style and mood. So I think the hand and finger independence is a difficulty level where you just have to put everything together with all of those contrasts that Beethoven's provided for us. So take your time, as I've been saying, go slow. Like measure 9, don't forget that we have our staccatos over the wedges. You could even just record yourself and watch that left hand is lifting more quickly while the right hand stays more closely to the key to achieve that contrast. You should have a steady tempo to be able to get it comfortable, to achieve a fast speed, to get those hand extensions comfortable, going back to the blocking practice of those chords in the left hand, and then the right hand thinking those 5-finger scale positions. So that will help you automatize it to process it faster, and that's critical to be able to play it quickly. Trusting the right hand, not watching your hand, because the left hand does require some looking at finding those low bass notes, especially when you jump down. So practice strategy reminders, practice it hands separate. All of it is stable tempo. Just because it's easy, don't go faster. Put your metronome on, tap your foot if you have to keep it nice and stable. To get it hands together, block that left hand, right hand over left hand blocked. Watch the score. That'll build your sight reading skills. Play the left hand in rhythm until you can play that normal accompaniment pattern that way. Lastly, we can add some rubato. This is from Beethoven, who composed within the classical into the romantic time period. Czerny was a romantic composer as well. So where's rubato appropriate since this is a dance? Think about those big jumps. Maybe the dancer's actually jumping. That takes a little bit of time for them to move there. So at those phrase goals, you're going to hear them stretch that timing a little bit. Also reminds me to be able to make it sound like an Écossaise written for a band ensemble. Get those dynamic contrasts. Remember, start very soft like the flutes into the loud brass. Contrast it with those subito dynamics that Beethoven loved to write with. Use your pedal for extra resonance. We know that Beethoven loved the use of pedal as well. So take your time to achieve that ease of expression, hands separate with the articulations, with the dynamics, with the contrasts within that fast tempo. Enjoy this process of learning the Écossaise and then transfer these skills that I've taught you here to your favorite classical piece. Enjoy the journey, pianist.